The marriage deal Evan Cross was tired of being poor. He worked in a broken repair shop on the edge of ruined earth. Fixing old shuttles for food rations, the world was dying, cities sinking under dust storms, oceans turned gray, and hope had become a forgotten word. Every night he stared at the sky, watching the rich aliens flying above in their golden ships. They lived in peace while humans fought for scraps. Evan wished for one thing, to leave this cursed planet. One evening, a man in a silver coat walked into his shop. He was tall, calm, and not fully human, his eyes glowing faintly blue. He said he represented the Galactic Marriage Bureau. They helped poor humans find cross-species matches, marriages that joined two worlds. If Evan agreed, he would get a home, money, and his own ship. All he had to do was marry a noble alien woman. Evan laughed at first, thinking it was a scam, but the man showed him a hologram of her, Lady Vera. She was beautiful beyond words, tall, silver-skinned, with soft glowing eyes like the moon. She was rich, powerful, and from a race called the Zephyrians, known for their elegance and mystery. The deal sounded unreal, but the Bureau promised it was legal. All documents were signed through the Galactic Council. Evan hesitated for days, but the thought of leaving Earth pushed him forward. The wedding was arranged on Lunaris Station, orbiting high above Mars when Evan arrived. He was given a black suit made of shining fabric that moved like liquid. The hall was filled with alien guests, creatures of every color and shape. Music played that he could not understand. When Lady Vera entered, the crowd went silent. Her long silver hair floated behind her, her gown glowing with starlight. She walked toward Evan and smiled gently. Her voice sounded like wind passing through crystal. "Do you accept the bond, human?" she asked softly. Evan nodded, barely breathing when their hands touched. A strange warmth spread through his chest. For a moment his heart beat in rhythm with hers. The ceremony ended with a flash of blue light. Everyone clapped, and the Galactic Marriage Bureau confirmed the union. Evan was now husband to one of the most powerful alien women in the galaxy. They left the station together in a private ship, sleek and glowing with runes. Inside there were no pilots, only soft lights and moving walls that breathed like a living being. Vera sat beside him. Silent for most of the journey, Evan tried to talk, but she only looked out the window at the stars. After a while, she turned to him and said, "You wanted freedom, Evan, now you will have it." He smiled awkwardly, thinking she was just being poetic, but her tone was calm, almost sad. She touched his chest again and whispered something in her language. The same warmth spread inside him, but this time stronger. He felt dizzy, his vision blurred before he could ask what she said. Everything around him faded to white when he woke. He was in a room made of glass and silver. It was quiet. Too quiet. Outside the window floated two suns, one gold, one red. He realized they were not near Mars anymore. They were in another star system. He called out for Vera, and she entered the room like a shadow of light. "Welcome to your new home," she said softly. Her voice sounded distant, echoing through the walls. Evan looked around. The place was huge, filled with glowing plants and silent fountains. He should have been happy, but his chest hurt again where she had touched him. Later, when he asked to contact Earth, she shook her head gently. "There is no signal that reaches so far," she said. He asked how far they were, and she only smiled. "Far enough that time has forgotten you." Her words sent a chill through him. She gave him fine clothes, rich food, and a golden key that opened nothing. At night, he wandered the hallways, touching the glowing walls. They pulsed under his fingers like veins. When he pressed his hand to one wall, it whispered something, his own name. He stepped back, heart racing. He realized the walls were alive, and somehow they recognized him. The next morning, Vera took him to a balcony overlooking the twin suns. She looked at him with strange affection. "In my world, love is not just words," she said. "It is energy, it is connection." He tried to laugh, but she continued, "You are now part of that connection, Evan. Forever." Her words made him uneasy. He looked at her face, beautiful but unreadable. "What do you mean forever?" he asked. She didn't answer directly. Instead, she placed her palm on his heart and whispered, "The stars will guide you soon." When she walked away, Evan felt something inside him move, a faint hum. It matched the rhythm of the palace lights, as if he and the place shared one heartbeat. He stood there in silence, realizing he might not be free after all. He thought he had married for wealth, for a better life, but now, surrounded by alien beauty and endless stars, He felt like a bird inside a golden cage, and somewhere deep inside, he heard a soft voice, Vera's, whisper, "You belong to me now." The stars outside shined brighter than ever, but for Evan Cross, freedom was already slipping away. The cage of luxury Evan Cross woke up to the sound of soft music. The walls of the Crystal Palace shimmered with faint light, changing colors like sunrise trapped inside glass. At first, he thought it was a dream, but then he saw Vera sitting quietly beside the window. She was staring at the stars, her silver hair floating as if underwater. When she turned, her glowing eyes met his, and she smiled gently. "You slept long, human husband," she said softly. "Your body is still learning the rhythm of the palace." Evan tried to laugh but felt dizzy again. He touched his chest and felt that strange pulse under his skin. It was no longer just a heartbeat. It felt like a small engine, humming in harmony with the palace walls. He stood up and looked around, realizing how silent everything was. There were no servants, no sounds of machines, no footsteps except their own. The food appeared by itself, floating on silver trays that dissolved when touched. Everything looked perfect, too perfect. Days passed in slow motion. Vera treated him kindly but never let him out of the palace. Whenever he asked about going outside, she smiled and said, "You would not survive the light beyond." He didn't understand what she meant. She gave him books that glowed, filled with stories of the Zephyrians, her people. They lived for thousands of years, feeding not on food, but on energy bonds. The words made him uneasy. He began to wonder what kind of bond his marriage had truly created. Sometimes Evan tried to find the ship's main console, hoping to send a message to Earth, but every door he opened led back to the same hall. It was as if the palace itself shifted to keep him from leaving. When he finally reached the control room, it welcomed him by name. A soft voice spoke, "Welcome, Core-bearer Evan Cross." He froze. "Core-bearer," he whispered before he could ask more. The console shut down, the walls turning dark blue. He felt the hum inside him grow louder, as if the palace responded to his fear. That night, Evan couldn't sleep. He heard whispers from the walls, faint and distant like voices underwater. They spoke in Zephyrian but sometimes used human words, words like remember, alive, and bound. He followed the sound to a large mirror that rippled like liquid. For a second, he saw faces inside it, humans, their eyes closed, floating in blue light. He stumbled backward, heart pounding. When he looked again, the mirror was just a wall, shining calmly as before. The next morning, he confronted Vera. "What is this place?"
"Why can't I leave?"
he demanded. She looked at him with sadness, not anger. "This is your home now," she said quietly. "You are safe here. Nothing will harm you." "Safe?" he snapped. "You've locked me inside a dream, Vera. I want to go home." Vera walked closer, her expression unreadable. "Home?" she whispered. "You still think Earth remembers you? Evan, you've been gone for months, yet only one day has passed there." He froze in shock, realizing time was moving differently here. "How is that possible?" he asked, trembling. "The palace exists between moments," she said softly. "It bends time around us so you never age." Her words felt both comforting and terrifying. He turned away, feeling trapped in beauty that no longer felt beautiful. Every luxury around him, the golden halls, the soft lights, the music, now felt like part of a cage. He tried to break one of the glass doors, but the moment he struck it, a wave of light pushed him back. The palace itself protected her command. He fell to the floor, gasping for air, and the hum in his chest grew violent. Vera knelt beside him and placed her hand over his heart. Immediately, the pain stopped and calm returned. "Please don't fight it," she whispered. "The bond protects us both." Evan stared at her, confusion and fear mixing inside him. "What bond?" he asked. She didn't answer, only kissed his forehead, her lips cold as frost. "Sleep, Evan," she said. "You will understand soon." He tried to resist, but his vision blurred again, the palace lights fading into silver mist. When he woke this time, he was in another part of the palace, a garden floating under a glass dome. Stars bloomed like flowers, glowing softly all around him. He stood there, stunned by the beauty, but also realizing the truth. This garden wasn't real. It was a projection made from his own memories. His favorite tree from Earth, the sound of rain he missed. The palace was reading his thoughts, feeding his emotions back to him like a mirror. He sank to his knees, whispering, "What am I now?" Far away, Vera watched him through a crystal screen, her expression sad. She touched the glass where his image appeared and whispered to herself, "You were supposed to love the stars, not fear them." But her glowing eyes flickered, not with light, but with guilt. Evan stood alone in that dreamlike garden. Around him everything sparkled, everything shined, yet nothing felt real. The hum in his chest beat louder than his heart, and for the first time, he understood. He was not a guest in the palace, he was part of it. The forbidden room days turned into a blur of silver light and quiet whispers. Evan no longer knew when it was morning or night. The palace had no sun, only endless twilight. Glowing softly from every wall, Vera came and went like a ghost, speaking little, always watching him with calm sadness. She called him my bond, not my husband, and each time she said it, he felt his heart tighten a little more. He began exploring the palace in secret. Every corridor looked the same, endless glass and silver arches, yet he felt something pulling him deeper. Sometimes, when he passed a hallway, the walls pulsed faintly, as if guiding him somewhere. He followed those pulses one night, barefoot and silent. The palace felt alive under his steps. Like it was breathing. At the end of the corridor, he found a large sealed door made of dark crystal. It was different from the rest, not smooth, but carved with strange Zephyrian runes that glowed faintly blue. When he touched the surface, the runes shifted, forming words he could read. "Only the bound may enter." He hesitated, but then the hum in his chest answered, a vibration that matched the rhythm of the door. The lock shimmered, and slowly the door opened. A rush of cold air passed over him, smelling like starlight and dust. Inside was a vast chamber, silent and dim. Rows of statues lined the walls, all human, all perfectly still. At first, Evan thought they were carved figures, until he saw one of them breathe. His blood froze. Each figure stood in a crystal pod, eyes closed, skin pale but alive, men and women, all wearing different Earth-style clothes. Old, modern, futuristic. They were from different times, different worlds, but all had the same faint glow around their chests, the same hum he felt within himself. Evan moved closer to one pod and wiped the glass. Inside, a young man floated with a faint smile. The pod's base showed a name, Core Anchor 47, Terran male. He stumbled backward in horror. There were dozens of pods, maybe hundreds, stretching far into the darkness, every one of them labeled with similar tags. Human names, dates, planets. His heart pounded wildly, his chest aching as the hum grew louder. Then a soft voice echoed behind him. "You were not supposed to come here." He turned sharply, and there stood Vera, her face calm but her eyes glowing brighter than ever. He took a step back, shaking. "What is this place? Who are they?" he demanded. She looked at the pod sadly. "They are my anchors," she whispered. "They are the ones who keep me alive." Evan's breath caught. "Alive? You mean you took them?" Vera nodded slowly. "The Zephyrians are not born like humans," she said. "We merge with energy, with emotion, to survive eternity." Her voice trembled slightly as she stepped closer. "When our kind began to fade, we searched for those who could hold our essence. Bind it and give it warmth." She looked into his eyes. "Humans were perfect. Your hearts carry something we lost, connection." Evan's mind raced. "So all of them," he pointed toward the pods, "were people you married?" Her silence was answer enough somewhere. A machine hummed and the pods flickered softly like candles in the dark. Vera reached toward him, her hand shaking. "You were supposed to be the last," she whispered. "The one who could finally make the bond pure." He stepped back, fear and betrayal burning in his chest. "You lied to me," he said. "You said I'd be free. You said I'd have a new life." Vera's eyes dimmed. "You do?" she said softly. "A life that will never end." Her voice echoed through the chamber. Mixing with the hum of the pods, he could feel the energy around him. All those lives, all those souls connected to the palace like a web. And in that moment, he realized the truth. He wasn't living in the palace. He was becoming part of it. He turned and ran, the hall twisting behind him as the lights shifted to red. The palace tried to close doors, to trap him, but he pushed through, guided by pure panic. He could feel Vera's voice in his head, calm but pleading. "Evan, please, I didn't want to hurt you. I wanted to save my world." He ignored her, his heartbeat clashing with the hum. Every step felt heavier, every breath filled with static. Finally, he reached the upper balcony, collapsing against the glass. Stars burned outside, beautiful, endless, cold. He looked at his reflection and saw faint glowing lines spreading across his skin like circuits. He gasped, realizing the palace was already fusing with him. He fell to his knees, whispering, "No, no, I won't be like them." Behind him, Vera appeared silently. Her expression was not cruel. It was broken. She knelt beside him and touched his cheek. "I told myself I would not do this again," she said softly. "But your heart, it was too bright." He pushed her hand away, trembling. "What are you going to do to me?" he whispered. She smiled faintly, tears shimmering like stars in her eyes. "Nothing," she said. "The bond is already complete." And before he could move, the hum in his chest became a roar. Light filled his vision, white and endless. He screamed, feeling both pain and weightlessness. Vera whispered one last thing as everything went dark. "You are not my prisoner, Evan. You are my core." Escape in starlight. Evan Cross woke to silence. The palace around him was dark, its glowing walls now dim and cracked. He lay on the cold silver floor, his body trembling, his chest burning with faint blue light. He remembered the pods, the trapped humans, and Vera's soft voice calling him her core. The memory struck him like fire. He wanted to scream, but only a whisper came out. "I have to get out." When he stood, he felt something strange. The palace responded. Every step he took made the walls pulse, the lights flicker, the floor tremble. It was as if the palace obeyed him now. He realized the bond that tied him to Vera also tied him to the ship itself. He could feel its heartbeat, deep and rhythmic like a sleeping giant. And somewhere within that heartbeat, he heard her voice, soft and distant. "Evan, please don't run. You are part of me now." He clenched his fists and shouted back, "I'm not your prisoner." His voice echoed through the endless halls. Shaking dust from the ceiling, he walked forward, guided not by sight but by instinct, or perhaps the pulse inside him. The corridors rearranged again, but this time he saw their pattern each turn. Each flicker of light followed his emotions. When he felt fear, the halls darkened. When he felt courage, they opened wider. He realized he could shape the palace through his own will. Evan reached what looked like the control chamber, a vast room with floating crystals spinning around a glowing orb. The orb pulsed the same way his chest did. He touched it and the light flared, showing images of distant stars. Then the system spoke in a calm voice. "Core synchronization detected. Evan Cross granted command access." He froze, staring at the orb, realizing he could control everything now, even her, for the first time. He felt power instead of fear. He whispered, "Open all exits." The orb glowed brighter and the entire palace began to shift. Doors opened, windows cracked, energy fields flickered off. He could see the outer sky through the breaks, twin suns blazing on the horizon. But the victory didn't last long. The air turned cold, and a soft light appeared behind him. It was Vera, floating slightly above the ground, her silver gown rippling like liquid starlight. Her eyes were no longer calm. They were filled with sadness and fire. "You shouldn't have done this," she said quietly. "The bond is not meant to break." Evan turned toward her, anger burning inside him. "You tricked me, you trapped me." "You took their lives," he said. His voice trembling, she looked away, whispering, "I saved them, Evan. They are not dead. They are eternal." "Eternal isn't living," he shouted. "It's slavery." The lights around them began to swirl. Reacting to their emotions, Vera's power filled the room like a storm. But Evan's chest glowed brighter, matching her strength. He realized that as long as the bond connected them, he could fight her. He closed his eyes and focused on one thought: freedom. The orb answered, flaring with white energy. A shockwave burst through the chamber, pushing Vera back. She screamed, her voice echoing like thunder across the ship. Cracks spread across the walls, light pouring through like lightning. "Evan, stop. You'll destroy us both," she pleaded, but he kept pushing, feeling his heart merge with the ship's pulse. Every beat drained his strength, but he refused to stop. "I'd rather die as a man than live as your shadow," he whispered. Suddenly, a small door opened behind the control orb, a hidden escape pod chamber. He stumbled toward it, every step heavier than the last. Vera reached out, trying to stop him, but when her hand touched his shoulder, energy surged between them for a split second. Their memories collided. His pain, her loneliness, their bond of love and regret. He saw her world dying, her people fading into dust, her desperation to save them, and she saw his dream of freedom, his longing for a real life, for a moment. Both stood frozen in shared understanding. "Evan," she whispered, tears falling like drops of light. "I never wanted to hurt you. I just wanted to live." He looked back at her, voice breaking. "And you took my life to do it." He stepped into the pod, the door sealing behind him. Through the glass he saw her reach out, glowing hands pressed against the barrier. "Please don't leave me," she cried. "Without you, I fade." The pod systems came online. The engines humming softly, Evan hesitated, then said quietly, "I'm sorry." He pressed the release, the pod launched into space, breaking through the palace's shell like a spark escaping fire. Behind him, the great Zephyrian palace began to collapse. Vera's voice echoed through the comms, faint but haunting. "You can never escape me, Evan. For the stars remember their own." As the pod drifted away, Evan looked back one last time. The shining palace shattered into a million fragments, each piece glowing like a falling star. Fading into the endless dark, he closed his eyes, tears floating in the zero-gravity air. Freedom was his at last, but his heart still hummed softly, carrying her voice. The lonely wanderer. The stars stretched endlessly around Evan Cross. His escape pod drifted through the black sea of space, tiny and fragile among burning suns. For days, maybe weeks, he floated alone, staring at the glowing fragments of Vera's shattered palace fading behind him. He told himself he was free, yet his heart whispered otherwise, because every time he closed his eyes, he still heard her voice. Soft, distant, echoing through his veins. "Evan," she whispered in his dreams. "The bond cannot break." He would wake sweating, clutching his chest, feeling that strange hum still alive under his skin. It was faint but constant, like a heartbeat that wasn't his own. He tried to ignore it, tried to convince himself it was just a memory, but deep down, he knew part of her was still inside him. One night, the pod systems flickered and died. Oxygen levels fell, the lights dimmed, and cold air filled the cabin. Evan sat in the dark, staring at the fading console. He whispered to himself, "So this is how it ends." But then, something inside him stirred. His chest began to glow. Faint blue light spreading through his veins, the pod's power core came back online. Systems repairing themselves as if touched by invisible hands. He looked at his glowing reflection and whispered, "Vera." Days later, a merchant freighter picked up his pod near the rim belt. The crew dragged him aboard. Shocked by his condition, he looked human. Yet his eyes had faint silver rings. His blood shimmered under light. When they asked what happened, he only said, "Shipwreck," and nothing more. They didn't push him. Wanderers were common. But something about him felt different, almost sacred. The captain gave him a small job fixing ship engines. He worked quietly, never speaking of his past. But strange things began happening wherever he went. Machines that were broken for years suddenly worked when he touched them. The ship's power grid stabilized even during storms. One night, a crewman saw his hands glowing faintly as he repaired a reactor coil. Rumors spread. They began calling him Starbound. The man who carried light in his blood. Evan stayed silent, pretending not to hear. But fear slowly grew among the crew. They whispered that he was cursed, that he brought alien power with him. When he tried to sleep, Vera's voice would return. Soft, lonely, almost human. "Evan, can you hear me?" she whispered through the static of his dreams. "I am lost between the stars, but you carry what remains of me," he shouted into the void of his mind. "Leave me alone." But her answer was only silence, followed by a faint warmth in his chest. It wasn't pain, it was sorrow. He realized she wasn't trying to control him anymore. She was fading, slowly dying inside him. One day, while repairing the outer hull, he saw a small light drifting across space. It looked like a fragment of crystal, a piece of her palace still glowing. He felt his heart ache. He reached out through the void, touching it with his mind. For a brief second he saw her, Vera, standing in the light, fragile and pale. "Evan," she said weakly, "they are gone. My people are gone. You are all that remains." He tried to speak, but she smiled faintly and vanished. The light dissolved into dust, leaving him shaking. He realized then that her death meant something greater. He was now the last echo of an entire civilization. As weeks passed, he drifted from planet to planet. He helped where he could, repairing machines, healing energy systems, saving colonies from power failures. Everywhere he went, people saw the same glow in his eyes and called him a blessing. But when they asked where he came from, he only said, "From the stars." Each act of kindness made the hum in his chest stronger, not darker. It was as if Vera's power had become something new inside him. Not a curse, but compassion still. When he looked at the stars at night, he missed her. He missed her voice, her calm tone, even her sadness. Love and hate had mixed so deeply in his heart that he no longer knew where one ended and the other began. Sometimes when he was alone in empty space, he would whisper softly, "Vera, if you can hear me, I forgive you," and in those moments, the stars around him seemed to flicker as if answering him. But forgiveness didn't heal the loneliness. He was free now, yes, but freedom felt heavier than chains. He was no longer just human. He was something else. Something between man and starlight. A living echo of two souls bound beyond death. And as his ship floated silently through the black, he whispered to the stars, "I thought you trapped me, Vera, but maybe you were the one who set me free." The return to the palace. The galaxy had grown silent for Evan Cross. Years passed like drifting shadows, and though he traveled from world to world, his heart never found rest. He had become something more than human, yet less than whole. The energy inside him, Vera's essence, still pulsed faintly, reminding him he was never truly alone, but it was fading, weaker each day, as if calling to him from across the stars. One night, while repairing an old cargo beacon near the edge of a dying system, his console blinked. A distress signal appeared, faint, ancient, and written in Zephyrian code, the same language he had once seen carved into the forbidden door. His heart stopped for a second. He knew that frequency, that rhythm, that tone. It was her, Vera. He hesitated for hours, pacing the deck, torn between anger and longing. Part of him screamed to ignore it, to keep flying, to let the past die. But the hum in his chest grew louder, beating like a forgotten promise. In the end, he couldn't resist. He set a course for the signal and whispered to the empty ship. One last time, the coordinates led him into a collapsing system, a dying sun wrapped in swirling dust and lightning. Amid the chaos floated the shattered remains of her palace, once bright and proud, now cracked, dark and broken, drifting in silence. The beauty that once trapped him now looked like a ghost. As his ship approached, the fragments glowed faintly, forming a path of light. It felt like the palace itself remembered him. Evan landed on the largest fragment. The surface was covered in frozen starlight, shards of crystal reflecting his face. He walked slowly, his boots echoing in the hollow air. Each step brought memories rushing back. The day he met her, the warmth of her touch, her words, "You belong to the stars." Now those words felt heavy, like a prophecy he had never escaped. He entered a cracked chamber filled with flickering light. In the center, floating above a pool of energy, was Vera. But she was no longer the radiant figure he remembered. Half her body was light, the other half mechanical. Wires, circuits, and glowing veins. Her silver hair drifted around her like fading mist. When she saw him, her eyes widened with disbelief and hope. "Evan," she whispered, her voice fragile. "You came back." He stared at her in silence, his throat dry. "I thought you were dead," he said softly. "I saw your world fall apart." She smiled weakly. "It did. And so did I." Her voice cracked like breaking glass. "My people are gone, Evan." The bond fragments could not sustain them. She looked away, tears of light falling down her face. "I tried to reach you, but the stars took my strength." He wanted to hate her, to yell, to remind her of what she'd done. But when he saw her like that, weak, broken, alone, the anger faded. Instead, he felt something else. Sorrow. "What do you want from me?" he asked quietly. She looked up, her eyes glowing faintly. "I want forgiveness," she said. "And a final bond." He stepped back, uneasy. "No, never again," but she shook her head. "Not to trap you, not this time." Her tone was softer, filled with regret. "When the palace collapsed, part of my core fused with yours. That's why you lived, Evan. That's why you glow." She paused, her voice trembling. "You became my echo, my living memory." He froze, realizing the truth. He was alive because of her. Her sacrifice had saved him, even when he thought she cursed him. She continued, her light flickering. "The bond was never meant for control. It was meant for balance. The Zephyrians fed on connection because we had forgotten how to feel. You gave that back to me," she whispered. "And through me, to all that remains." He stared at her, confused. "There's nothing left to save." But she smiled faintly. "There is. If you help me." She pointed to the pool of energy beneath her. It shimmered with faint human shapes, echoes of those trapped souls. "If I use the last of my power, I can release them," she said. "But it will end me completely unless you share your light with me." Evan's heart pounded. "If I do that?" he asked. "You'll live," she said softly. "But I will finally sleep." The silence between them was endless. He looked into her fading eyes and saw not a monster but a soul lost in eternity. A being who once wanted to live but now only wanted peace. He walked closer, placing his glowing hand over hers. "Maybe this time," he whispered. "We save each other." Their hands touched, light burst through the chamber. Blinding and pure, the broken palace trembled, its fragments rising, spinning around them like stars reborn. Evan felt warmth fill his chest, merging with hers. He saw flashes of every memory, laughter, pain, love, betrayal, forgiveness, and then silence. When the light faded, the palace was gone. Only Evan floated in space, surrounded by dust that shimmered like diamonds. He looked down at his hands, no longer glowing, just human. For the first time in years, the hum in his chest was gone. Vera's voice whispered faintly one last time. "Thank you, Evan. For giving me back my heart." He closed his eyes, tears drifting into the void. For the first time, he felt truly free and truly alone. But deep in the distance, a single star flickered brighter. A reminder that love, no matter how strange, no matter how tragic, and could still outshine the dark. The choice among the stars, the universe was silent. Only the hum of dying starlight echoed through the void where the Zephyrian palace once drifted. Evan Cross floated among the fragments, surrounded by glowing dust that shimmered like frozen dreams. He had freed her, he had kept his promise, and now the stars themselves felt empty without her voice. The hum in his chest, the sound that once bound him to Vera, was gone, replaced by a strange calm. For the first time in years, he felt completely human, yet he also felt something missing, like half of his soul had faded away. He closed his eyes and whispered, "Vera, if you can hear me, I hope you found peace." No voice answered, only the faint vibration of distant stars. But as he looked up, one light flickered differently from the rest. It pulsed slow and soft, matching the rhythm that once beat inside his chest. He stared at it for a long time. It wasn't just a star, it was her. Her energy had become part of the cosmos, and somewhere deep inside him a whisper stirred. Evan. The bond was never meant to end, only to change. He didn't know if it was real or just memory, but he felt her presence again, warm and gentle. The dust around him began to swirl, forming glowing streams of light. They curved around him like arms, holding him softly. He felt no fear, only peace then from the darkness beyond. A voice, mechanical but faintly human, called out through his ship's communicator. "Unidentified vessel, do you copy? We've picked up unusual energy readings near your location." It was a patrol ship from the human exploration fleet. For a moment, Evan hesitated, torn between answering and disappearing forever. The past and the future both stood before him. He could return to humanity, to life, to others, to stories, or he could follow the light, join her in eternity. He looked at his reflection in the ship's cracked glass. He didn't look like the same man anymore. His eyes carried both sorrow and starlight. He smiled faintly, whispering, "Maybe I was never meant to choose one world." He turned the comm on, speaking quietly. "This is Evan Cross, last survivor of the Zephyrian bond, requesting extraction." But before pressing send, he stopped, because from the star ahead came one final pulse, a heartbeat of pure light. It wasn't calling him to die, it was calling him to understand. That love in any form never truly disappears. It transforms, spreads, and lights new paths for those who follow. He realized the bond had not trapped him or broken him. It had changed him, made him something stronger. Something human, but more, he whispered to the stars. "You gave me a reason to believe again." And in that moment, he understood. He didn't need to choose between man or light. He could be both, the bridge between worlds, the proof that humanity could love even the impossible. He powered up the engines, the ship humming softly beneath his hands. As he set course back toward the human colonies, the dust followed him. It wrapped around his vessel like a trail of silver fire, and from within that fire a faint voice laughed, gentle, warm, familiar, Vera. She was no longer gone, she was everywhere, woven into the light itself. Evan smiled as the stars grew brighter. "Goodbye, my starlight," he whispered. Or maybe, hello again. The ship vanished into hyperspace, leaving behind a new trail of light, a light that shimmered brighter than any star. On the galactic scanners of distant worlds, scientists would later record the event, a single pulse that ignited an entire nebula. They called it the Heart of Two Suns. But among the wanderers it was known by another name, the Promise of Evan Cross, because in a galaxy full of ancient empires and cold machines, one human heart had proven that love could outlive even the stars.